Good morning. Our last class here online, our last class ever, but here online, I am going to take you through the PowerPoint. So this will be your lecture, and then I'll also remind you about a few things. I want you to pull up the Exam 6 PowerPoint, guidance PowerPoint listed under the link for Music in the US. It is the full PowerPoint link for Exam 6. But we today are going to go to the PowerPoint and we're going to go to number 40, slide number 40, and that's where we're going to start. So pause this for a moment, find your PowerPoint, and then come back. Starting with slide number 40, first I just want to remind you that there's one more concert opportunity on campus. Well, it's a little off campus. It's at St. Catherine's, just north of the school. And it's going to be a beautiful, Christmassy concert. And I really encourage you, excuse me one moment, to attend. That's 7:30. 7:30 tonight, Thursday, December 7th. Also, make sure that you have your reports into me, either numbering them and sending them to me via email or giving them to me in hard copy form, making sure they're numbered as well. Name and number. Okay, 41. We are moving into rock and roll of the 1950s. 42. So where did it all start? How did American pop music get its start? Well, it really began back in what are called the field haulers of the slave workers and the field workers, or the slaves, I should say, term that correctly. And from that, there were what we call spirituals. I don't have that listed here. Spirituals were very important. Are still part of actually the art song tradition because so many of them. Excuse me a second. I have something in my eye. American spirituals are very important in art song literature and choral literature here in the United States. So the field haulers kind of mutated, I guess, poor choice of words, into the blues, a form of jazz. The blues, we've studied the blues. And then there was something that was brought in. Some of the instruments came in and started moving the blues a little faster and became rhythm and blues, R&B. And that then developed into what we now know as rock and roll, which includes rhythm and blues plus gospel, and even some country and jazz, of course. Slide 43. In the 1950s, the U.S. is a segregated country. I think it still is, but it was certainly much more segregated. 1947. Truman integrates the government buildings. You think about that. That's not that long ago. 60 years ago. 70 years ago. If I can count. Yeah, still, think about that. Some of you might have great-grandparents or grandparents who were born before the government was integrated. 1954, Eisenhower then integrates public schools in the cities and in the South. That was particularly empowering. Slide 44. So here we are, coming into the 50s, but until 1942, you're going to want to know this. ASCAP has a monopoly on recording. And it produces this really bland, generic, romantic music with gentle rhythms. Kind of like, well, take no offense because I actually really do admire the man. Lawrence Welk, the North Dakotan Lawrence Welk. Raise your hand, wish I could see you, if you've heard of Lawrence Welk. Kind of bland, kind of safe, very white. So, but in 1942, there was a monopoly was broken by BMI, which was the major recording label, and it was followed by independent labels. They were able to record music that was associated with the very poor South, Country and Western. C&W stands for Country and Western. Gospel, Jazz, and R&B. Then things really started happening. Frame 45. After the television is invented, it is expected that the radio will die out during that time. But then the transistor radio appeared. I had a little transistor when I was young. A few of you may remember those. And by 1964, there are more radios in the U.S. than people. 46. During the Eisenhower years, the presidency, the economy is good. Young people are going off to college in large numbers, and teens have a lot of money to spend, and they become a market force. So this show, excuse me, I have something in my eye. American Bandstand. I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but yeah, this was like the show to watch in the 1950s and into the 1960s, maybe even the early 70s, I think, maybe. It was a television show that focused on rock and roll. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Dick Clark. Yes, of course, Dick Clark. He looked eternally young. He was the star of the show. And of recent, I've actually seen on news that his family and his ex-wife or his wife are squabbling over his money, which is really sad because he was such a wonderful man. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's go to 48. So, 1959, 1960, there's something called the payola charges. The Federal Trade Commission charges unfair practices, and this is what had happened. Payola would make payments to DJs, and the DJs would promote those tunes. So it didn't promote a fair system. The big DJs at the time, they were not included in the scam, but the two big DJ names are Alan Freed and Dick Clark. Leading artist of the 1950s. Frame 49. There was Little Richard. He was flamboyant, African-American pianist, torn between rock and roll and religion, and he really truly was. Brilliant musician. This is frame 49. I'm not going to play it for you now. I'm just going to have you go ahead and click it on, get a listen, watch him, because none of this is in the textbook. I just put this together for you all. You can watch him on YouTube with the link. You may have to open it to slideshow and then come back in and join in with me again. Going on to frame 50. Then there's Jerry Lee Lewis. He also was flamboyant, but he was a Caucasian. He was a white boy. Traveled outseas or overseas with his then 13-year-old second wife. He actually never divorced his first wife. There is a film that was made, Great Balls of Fire. Wish we had time to watch it, with an actress named Winona Ryder and an actor named Dennis Quaid. The link here for Jerry Lee Lewis. Enjoy. $1951. Here's a link to our area. One of the leading artists at the time was a man named Buddy Holly. He had a country western influence and kind of a hiccupy style of singing, which you'll see in the link. Sadly, he was killed in a plane crash traveling from Clear Lake, Iowa, to his next concert where? In Fargo, North Dakota. Tragic. Tragic loss. There is a movie called The Buddy Holly Story if you're interested in him. And here again is a YouTube link for you to enjoy. '52, continuing with our 1950s leading artists, Chuck Berry. He was a black guitarist and singer, had a country western influence. Played very important guitar solos that guitarists still play as standard. He had body movement on stage, and that brought us to the 1959 violation of the Mann Act. Here you can see him in the link. We're coming up to one of the biggest names in rock and roll history in America. But moving on to 53, Chuck Berry said, and here's the man's name, Elvis Road. Elvis. His road to stardom was paved. Chuck Berry, mine still had to be made. Chuck Berry made his own way. Elvis had his way made for him. That's what Chuck Berry says. 54. Here we are at Elvis, the King Presley. He was a white guitarist singer with gospel and blues influence. He wasn't a songwriter, but he covered black songs. Radio stations refused to play his music because he sounded black. There's this big show called The Ed Sullivan Show. When he came on the show, they filmed him from the waist up because Elvis was known for his twisting, gyrating hips. And here you will see in the YouTube link a little bit of the King. 55. Moving on with Elvis, the King Presley. He was extremely influential in changing the social and moral values of white American society. But he also created a new genre of music which was known as, guess what? Rock and roll. 56. Sun Records, one of the biggest labels of this period, if not the biggest label. Sam Phillips, I think he was the CEO, president, said, if I could find a white boy who could sing like a black, I could make $1 million. If I could find a white boy who could sing like a black, I could make $1 million. Well, guess what? Here are some more things that were said about rock and roll. Slide 57. Asa Carter, who was a member of the North Alabama White Citizens Council. Rock and roll is a means of pulling the white man down to the level of the Negro. It is part of a plot to undermine the morals of the youth of our nation. It is sexualistic, unmoralistic, and the best way to bring people of both races together. '58. Actually, that should be, you can ignore that. Let's go on. 58 is part of our quiz, but we're going to do that in Socrative. So let's go on to a man named Bill Monroe. I wanted to bring Bill Monroe in because of the strong bluegrass influence in this area. Bill Monroe is an American musician who popularized the form of really American music called bluegrass. And I have Monroe Crossing there. Whatever it is that's in my eye will go away. Monroe Crossing is a bluegrass group. They actually came here to Valley City a couple years ago. Just really amazing. And a thrill to watch and hear and so much fun. It is a return of country music to its original roots. It's acoustical, so it's not plugged in. There are no microphones, except for maybe one microphone for all the singers to lean into. It has singing and banjos, guitars, violin, upright bass when it's done fully. And here's a link. Please enjoy. Coming back to the PowerPoint. 60. These are questions for you to ponder. Think about this. What was the racial atmosphere in the U.S. in the 40s and 50s? Imagine what it might have been like, even around here. What was the connection between rock music and the integration movement? I talked about integration and mutation from field hollers to rock and roll. Why did rock and roll create such a shockwave? What was the importance of the independent record companies? Had to do with payola. 61. A couple more questions to think about. What kind of artists were recorded at Sun Records? What was the significance of Elvis Presley? And what was payola? Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, I know you're thrilled to know that your final, actually exam 6, will be Monday morning at 8 a.m. So, I am posting you've already got the PowerPoint up, obviously. You will have this lecture for today. I will get the written guide up for you by this evening, probably after the concert, or maybe before if I can find a moment to pop that up there for you. So, as always, let me know your questions. Hope you're doing okay. Don't forget to breathe. I know we're coming into finals week. And then we finally get to enjoy some Christmas and a break. So, we all need that. Get me your concert reports, number them, name them, and I'll see you on Monday morning. Have fun studying.